This leads me to the first lesson, which is simply to be curious and to understand that everything is a learning opportunity. And if you're not learning, then you should probably move on and find a new challenge. And that even when things don't work out as expected, you should view them as something that will prepare you for your next opportunity. Be disruptive. Think outside the box. Think crazy. If you're not crazy, you're not going to get anyone's attention. No one's going to care. Never waste a crisis. When something goes wrong, you should make it a big deal. And it can be tremendously motivating to your team. You can get a lot done. My entrepreneurship journey started at a very young age, and at the age of 12, one day I was homesick from school. And my dad is an electrical engineer. He had books about computers. And I just happened to take one of his books off the shelf and kind of flip through it. And I got curious. I started reading it. And as I created things, I started to post them on the internet. And I said, if you like my work, please send me $5. Nobody sent me $5. But at the age of 14, I got a phone call. And the person said, I saw your work on the internet, and I want to pay you $1,000 to create something similar. Well, 30 days later, I got paid. But even better, from that experience, he introduced me to more people who needed similar things done. And this began a business that I ran throughout high school, from the age of 14 until after my first year at Harvard. And over that period of time, I made $1 million. So this leads me to the first lesson, which is simply to be curious and to understand that everything is a learning opportunity. So when I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, I needed a place to stay. And so I went onto a website known as Craigslist, a classified site. And I went looking for roommates. And I found this apartment. And my two roommates became Joe and Brian. Later on, they would become my co-founders. They were designers, and I was an engineer. And we started helping each other out in our projects. I would create websites for them, and they would create marketing material for me and designs for my websites. And we thought to ourselves, wow, we could make a really good team working together. We have complementary skill sets. We have all our bases covered. And we all worked really hard. In the meantime, though, the rent on our apartment was raised 25%. And I said, you know what, guys? I don't like this apartment enough to stay here. It's too expensive. I'm moving out. So they had an idea. Why not rent out my vacant bedroom to designers who might need a place to stay? Now, there was a problem. This room was empty. It had no bed, no furniture. So where's the guest going to sleep? Well, Joe set up an airbed. And instead of calling it a bed and breakfast, he called it an air bed and breakfast. Okay? So Airbnb is short for air bed and breakfast. That's where the name comes from. So this is one of my favorite stories. We had this meeting at a cafe. And the investor comes in and orders a smoothie. And then he says, OK, go. And he says, start telling me your story. And as Brian is pitching him the story, that's Brian. As Brian's pitching the story, the guy's drinking a smoothie. All of a sudden, the guy gets up and walks out. His smoothie wasn't even done. So Brian was a little confused. He wasn't sure what had just happened. He thought maybe the guy had a phone call he had to answer. Maybe the guy had a parking meter. He had to put some money in the meter. But the guy never came back. He just abandoned his smoothie, said nothing, and walked out the door. That was the kind of reaction people were having. This is the real photo of Brian looking perplexed. What just happened? I'm glad we captured that moment. We're thinking to ourselves, OK, how can we generate buzz for our company again? Well, one thing we realized is we got a lot of publicity coverage in August. We met a lot of political reporters through that press that we got. And we thought, how can we re-engage them? Because the election's coming up soon. It's about a month or two away. And we thought, how can we do a story that will get their interest and get them to write about us again? And so Joe and Brian, I don't know how they did this, but came up with a totally wacky idea. I didn't like the idea, by the way. But they come up with this idea. Our name is Air, Bed, and Breakfast. So they're like, well, we've done air beds. How about we do breakfast? How about we create a presidentially themed breakfast cereal? I mean, that's such an obvious thing, right? Such an obvious idea. Was not obvious to me. They have this idea. They're going to create Obama O's. Hope in every bowl. They're also going to create Captain McCain's. A maverick in every bite. That's the other candidate for president. The plan is first 100 boxes to the reporters, and then the rest of the boxes they're going to sell. But how much is a box of cereal worth? Well, maybe a lot of money if you call it a limited edition collector's item, if you put a little number on it to make it seem very special. And then they need cereal, so they go to the supermarket, and they literally buy all the cereal. I mean, listen, they needed ultimately 800 boxes of cereal. Okay, so they actually had to talk to the supermarket manager and say, please make some special orders, extra orders of cereal. And they would literally go to the supermarket time after again with a shopping cart and just fill it all up with the cereal, bring it home, where they then would have to assemble the boxes, because their cardboard's flat, so you have to assemble it, hot glue it, take the cereal out of one box, put it in the next box, right? Hundreds and hundreds of boxes had to be made. And then they mailed it to reporters. The idea was if they mailed them something this goofy, that the reporters would have to call them back. They'd be curious. They'd want to know more. Because in the lead up to the election, everyone's covering the election, and there's lots of actually goofy things happening in the lead up to the election, and this news is covering it all. That week, we're on Good Morning America. We're back on CNN. That day we're on CNN, it becomes the #1 political video of the day. We're featured on the homepage. And we're selling a $40 box of cereal every 3 minutes until we sell out. That week, we sold $30,000 worth of cereal. That's more money than we had made all year in our core business. And I think the lesson here is, be disruptive. Think outside the box. Think crazy. If you're not crazy, you're not going to get anyone's attention. No one's going to care. And we go in there, and we start talking about air, bed, and breakfast. And within 2 minutes, Paul Graham says, wait, stop. You're telling me people let strangers in their homes? He's like, I would never do that. And then he says, you know what? You should do this other idea. And he basically spends the next 3 minutes trying to convince us to do something completely different. And then suddenly 5 minutes is over. Time's up. And we're walking out of the room. And we know that didn't go well. So as we're walking out, Joe takes out of his bag a box of Obama O's. And says, Paul, this is for you. And Paul says, did you buy me a gift? What is this? And Joe says, no, we made this. And he says, I don't understand. You made this box of cereal? And he said, yeah. And he said, come back into my office and tell me how you made the box of cereal. So we sit down for another 5 minutes, and we tell him the story about the cereal. Okay, so time's up, and we're walking out, and we're driving home. So we're driving back up to San Francisco. And we get stuck in traffic. Right in this place where it's kind of like a commonly known dead spot for cell coverage. So suddenly the phone rings. And it's Paul Graham. He says, hey, guys, I want to talk to you about something. I want to tell you that. And then click, the call got dropped. Out of service. And we're stuck in traffic, and our phones are not getting any signal. And we're like freaking out because we don't know. Is it good news, bad news? And you have to accept like right on the call. Like maybe he's not going to call back again. So we finally get to the traffic, and 15 minutes later he calls again. He's like, yeah, I wanted to tell you that you've been accepted. We later talked to Paul, and he told us why he let us in. He said, actually, I really don't like your idea at all. I think it's kind of weird. But he said, you told me that cereal story. And what that cereal story tells me is that you guys can get shit done. That you are super scrappy, and you can actually build things. And he says, we're in a recession right now, and I want founders in my program who are like cockroaches. I want founders that you can't kill. and that are resourceful, and they keep coming back for more. And he's like, that's you guys. You know, founders, they can always change their idea later. You can change your idea, but you can't change the team. So lesson number 3, be persistent. Obviously, that whole first year, tons of people telling us things like, I hope that's not the only thing you're working on, because it's not really normal for the founders to kind of show up and meet users in the real world, right? It's all online and virtual. So we come up with a trick. We notice that our users, they have really bad pictures. Some have no pictures, other pictures are poorly lit. I mean, this is 2009, so like the camera phones are really not as good as they are today. So people have really bad pictures, and we have an idea. Why don't we call them up and ask them if they would like a professional photographer to come to their home and take free photographs of their apartments? So that's our idea, and that's what we do. And most people that get the call, they're maybe a little surprised, confused, but they ultimately say, okay, sure, why not? It's free. And so we get to meet our users. We're in their living room. So lesson number 4, meet your user. Find product market fit. Get insights by knowing your customers super well. You need to be really laser focused on what is the customer experience, understanding their needs, and it's okay to do things that don't scale. I call this out because I think, you know, this has been really important to us in the long term. At the time, it kind of felt a little unnecessary. It's like, hey, we don't have anybody. Why do we need to define our core values? But if I look back on it now with more than 5,000 employees, I ask people when they come to our office, I say, look around. It's your first time here. What have you observed? What did you notice? And I'd say 90% of the time people say, wow, you know, people here seem really happy to be here. They seem really excited and fired up. And I think, you know, this advice can actually be applied whether you're starting a company or you're looking to join a company, which is to say, you know, don't treat it like a job. It's not just an opportunity to make money. You know, find something it is that you're truly passionate about. It'll be so much more fun if you do that. And as a side effect, you'll probably do well, and the whole money-making thing will come naturally. But champion the mission, lesson number 5. One of the things we did over this time is we implemented our guarantee, host guarantee. The idea was that if anything happens to your property, you can come to us and we'll take care of it. We'll pay for it. And so at the time, we wanted to offer this retroactively. We said, like, wow, how impressive would it be to say that we not only have a guarantee, but anyone who's used our service over the last 3 years and has had a bad experience can actually write to us and get paid. We were nervous. How many people will actually write to us? Maybe a lot. I don't know. Like, who knows how many people are out there? So how much can we offer? We say, okay, maybe $5,000. That seems like a safe amount. It's still. And actually, a few months later, we were able to acquire proper insurance and actually make a $1 million guarantee, which we still have today. We have a $1 million guarantee. So both of these things were real inflection points. And I think the lesson here is never waste a crisis, right? When something goes wrong, rather than trying to downplay it, you know what? Internally, you should make it a big deal. And you shouldn't just try to make it go away as a one-off. You should make some structural changes. And it can be tremendously motivating to your team. You can get a lot done. My favorite thing to do when I travel and meet users, meet hosts, is I ask them, I say, what does this mean to you? What does Airbnb mean to you? What's your favorite story? And you hear some of the most incredible stories. And for me as an entrepreneur, that's the most special thing, to know that you've impacted someone's life in a meaningful way, someone on the other side of the world whom you never imagined impacting. And I think that leads me to my last lesson, which is like, look, business is about more than just making money. It can be about so much more. As you think about companies to work for, think about that. It's a really special thing. So here's the overall summary here of the 7 lessons that I've learned along the way. Be curious, be disruptive, persistent, meet your users, champion the mission, never waste a crisis, and empower people. And what I'll say in reflection of all this is, you know, these are things I learned along the way, but these are things that are all still so applicable today. And so I hope they're things that you can apply as well on your journeys. Thank you.